All right. Hey, everybody. It's Rob. I'm just going to kill some time until I see my face show up on the stream because I had to jump between. Yep, there we are. Super. It's Rob. We're back for some AWS Step Functions. Today, we're going to cover workflows for development and testing. You see on the screen already, we've got a pretty full agenda. So I'm going to try to get all this done in under 1 hour. Still, the priority is your questions. You're here to get your questions answered, so please ask them. I've got some colleagues here on the mod to help answer them, and I'll also be trying to track the questions. We're going to start from an empty folder. We're going to create a workflow using the step function support in the AWS Toolkit for VS Code that we announced last week and did a show on. That's still here in the highlights if you haven't seen that yet. We're going to use the AWS SAM CLI to create a serverless app. We're going to hook up some CI/CD with CircleCI, which you may already be using. And then we're going to show how to move through some of these workflows. So basically the scenario is we've had a security analyst come to us and say, hey, I want to know anytime that this AWS config rule that we've set up is violated. And that rule is SSH access, right? And so let me make sure so it looks like this, right? The AWS config rule triggers this, the start. And I want two things to happen concurrently. I want that instance to be isolated out of the subnet by changing its security groups so that there's no traffic in or out. And at the same time, I want you to kick off a snapshot of the EBS volumes, right? So that we can triage it. And then once those two things have been completed, I want you to notify me via an SNS topic. So it's a pretty real world use case. The AWS config rule itself is going to hook up to a Lambda, and the Lambda is going to kick an AWS Lambda function. And that function is going to kick off our step functions workflow. We're not going to be going into config or Lambda today. We're just going to be focusing on the workflow orchestration parts of this. So since we've got that, let's see, we'll go here to our trusty console. And the first thing I'm going to do is just to give us a folder to work in. I'm going to use SAM CLI. We're going to jump order a little bit and we'll come back. So what we're going to do is SAM init -r go1.x. I use Go. You can use whatever you want to use. It's personal preference, right? We get this quick start template. Let's call it step function dev test. Boom. And we'll go in here. And the reason I do that is just so that we have a nice clean folder to start from. Like I said, we're going to be working with Visual Studio Code. Give me just a second to bring this into the monitor. Blow it up nice and big for y'all. And I'm going to put some screencast mode on so you can see what I'm doing. So this isn't the important thing right now. We'll hide this for now. And if you remember last week, we talked about creating a step function state machine from within Visual Studio Code. So almost everything that we're going to do today, we're going to be able to do within Visual Studio Code. There's some configuration stuff that we'll have to come out and do, like in CircleCI, we'll need to add some environment variables. If you already have that set up in your account, then you wouldn't have to do it. But for the most part, we're going to stay inside VS Code today. So we'll create a new step function state machine here. Uh-oh. It's not what I wanted to see. All right. And then parallel. So parallel is the most similar to that workflow that we just saw, right? There's parallel and there's map. Parallel is when you've got, I want to do task A and I want to do task B at the same time, and then hold until they both complete and then move on. The map state is dynamic parallelism. Like I have a collection of items that I want to apply the same task or workflow to each of those items independently. And then when that collection is complete, move on. So we're going to use parallel. And right out of the gate, we'll just go ahead and visualize this. Again, that was that little icon right here, or using the command palette render state machine graph. And we see that this already looks pretty similar. So let's pull in that graphic from our analyst and see what we got. Pretty sure I left it on my desktop. Yeah. Workflow to here. All right. Then we'll hide that. And so if we go back over here and we look at this workflow now, we can look at these side by side, right? So this is on the left, the workflow that we got from the analyst, and on the right, that's the workflow that we're building, right? With this state machine here. So it's probably better to bring this back over here for a little bit. We want to start at parallel. Yeah, well, that looks good. Parallel final state is the next one. That's actually going to be notify. So we need to go down here and make this notify. And we're going to be leaving everything as a pass state for now, just until we show this workflow of like, all right, I've got to get this right with the analyst. The tooltip came up there if you missed that. And then let's see, we got two states here. Pass, that's not what we want. We got two branches. Start at isolate. And then our states isolate. Let's call it we'll change it back to being a pass state. I'm moving pretty quickly, by the way. I know I'm making some assumptions here. That's because I want to show you that this can be done in an hour. And this is all going to be recorded and chopped up to step-by-step later, stored here and then on our YouTube channel as well. So you can go back through the lessons as you need to. So you got this tooltip here, right? Value of start at must match an existing state. So to solve that, we name one of our states start at. And then just make that an end state, right? And so now if we save this, let's call it our workflow. And now we want to revisualize it. Let's bring this back over here. All right. So that's it, right? Like isolate, snapshot, notify. We go to the analyst and we say, okay, is this your understanding of the process, right? Like, is this what you want to have happen when we get notified by that config rule so that we can move on? And it's yes, it's isolate by changing the security groups, snapshot the EBS volumes, notify us when we're complete, and then move on. So we've got this set up using just the toolkit inside Visual Studio Code. We're not going to publish it yet. I'm going to show you how to wedge this thing into AWS SAM, the serverless application model. There's not yet direct support for AWS Step Functions inside SAM. There's a little bit of a canonical trickery, right, that I'm going to show you here. Real quick, if you've never seen a SAM template, it's a CloudFormation transform. So this is just a superset of CloudFormation that uses this transform to give you access to things like serverless functions, serverless simple table, and other things. In our case, we're going to actually have to make a, let's call it isolator, right? And let's see, step functions. I'm doing this from memory, which is always a challenge. So let's see if that's actually right. State machine, properties. There's going to be a role that we need to add, and there's going to be a definition. And the definition is the tricky one. So with this definition, again, the trick that I want to show you. I'm cheating right now. I'm going back to my docs to look. There's a sub intrinsic function in CloudFormation. And what that does is it takes two arguments. One is a string and the other is a map. And I gotta get that. It's I'm gonna look it up to make sure I get it right, but it's something like this, right? And this second set of arguments is everything that we need below. So like the hello world function. So let me pop out to a terminal here, and I'll let you watch me cheat, right? So we'll all right. See, I ran through this rehearsing. Always rehearse, right? Otherwise, you're just gonna wind up stuck. So if we look in here, there's my magic incantation, right? I'm going to go ahead and grab the rest of it. It is an AWS Step Function state machine. We give it a name here, state machine name, a role ARN, which we're going to need to define. And then here's this first bit of that definition string. So I'm going to put all this in here. And now we've got these. And right here is where we're just going to take that workflow definition that we have. We're just going to drop it right there. All right. And we'll have to do some manual cleanup again, because right now, like I said, this isn't supported. One thing that can help with this, if you can tell on the stream, I'm using a plugin called Rainbow Indentation, as well as Rainbow Brackets, that lets you know when you got your indents lined up. But in our case, we need to bring this in pretty far. Let's see, right there. And then this one is where we want that to line up like that. And then when we go back over here, you'll see that's that second argument to the sub function, right? We just need to bring that back. So again, what this has done, this isn't going to make sense yet, and I'm going to pull it out, but I wanted you to see it. What this is a set of replacement values. So anytime you do up here something like, if you just refer to it with a $sign brace notation like that, it replaces that with your value from the list below. So that's how you sort of wedge a state machine definition into the SAM template. So for now, what we're going to do is pull that out of there, because we don't need it. It will actually sub nothing if there's nothing to sub, which is fine. And that's where we are. So we have also added this role ARN, and I think this actually needs to be this. Let's see. I don't know. We'll leave it. We've called it brancher role. So we need to create another resource, and we call it brancher role, and it's type AWS IAM role. This one again, I'm going to copy in here, because honestly, that's just how I build all my state machines and stuff, is by copying these, because they get a little complex. But we're going to go over it one at a time, one line at a time. All right. Yeah, that's the end of it. So this is the whole thing right here. It's not super complicated, but you'll notice that it's tightly scoped, right? So state machines in the region where we're deploying can assume this role. That's step function workflows, right? And then when you look at what the role can do, all it can do is invoke this specific Lambda function, right? So down here, we've defined hello world function already. We're just getting the ARM from it, and it's authorized to invoke that function. Now, it doesn't actually invoke that function yet, so we could cut this out, but we're just going to go ahead and leave it in since it's there. And at this point, what we have is a fully functioning SAM application, right? We've got one Lambda function that's, what do you call it, boilerplate code. So it's just given to us by the SAM CLI, sort of to get us started. It's currently listening for an API. We don't need that. We're not going to use that. We're not going to use environment variables. We'll go ahead and leave X-ray tracing active. But it's already set up. So we'll pull this API out, because that doesn't exist anymore. We'll leave the function there. The role we're not concerned with. We will be concerned with the ARN of the state machine later. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that so that we have it from the beginning. We'll call it brancher role description workflow ARN value get attribute brancher role.arn, right? So at this point, we can bring up our CLI here. We're still in the same directory. I've got my AWS account set. We can run SAM validate against that template. So I've done something wrong. Let's see. Isolator. I don't know. What do you think? Should we smoke test this? Should we just push it? What do you think? That's what I'm going to do. Sometimes it's easier to debug up there. Let's see. Let's see what happens on a good old SAM build and a SAM deploy. Okay, failed to parse template. That gave us a little more readable version, right? In Unicode string, while parsing a block mapping. So I must have done something weird here. AWS template, format version, transform. All right, so let's go back to the one that I ran before. And let's see if we've changed anything out of there. Doesn't look like it. This is why whenever you get code that works, you always, always, always keep it around, right? Oh, it doesn't like something in the isolator either. Oh. So I should have called this the isolator role. That's one reason. That's there. The isolator role. My isolator is indented. Thank you, helpful robot. That is correct. So isolator role is, we've outdented that correctly. We need to update some of this stuff here. Isolator role. State machine should be fine. I'll call this isolator role. And down here, 2 R's. Get rid of that. SAM validate. It's a valid SAM template. So thank you, helpful robot. That was very, very helpful, in fact, but I do not believe that you are a robot. Yes, as Retgit says, that's rainbow indent, which we use for YAML. I've also got rainbow brackets, rainbow braces. Let's see what, got lots of rainbows. Indent rainbow is the one that I use for that, and rainbow brackets for C syntax languages are the extensions that I'm using. Thanks, Reckits, for calling that one out. Okay, so we go in, we build this. How are we doing on time? We're at 17 minutes so far. We've got this built. We've got it pulled into an AWS SAM template. It builds. Next function is SAM deploy guided. I'm going to skip that today. Just normally, if you're in sort of a dev workflow, I would suggest that you use, well, we always suggest you use a different account for each stage, right? So each dev should have their own workflow. And then I would push this up to my own account. Because I've created one demo account for today, I'm going to do everything in one space. And so we're going to let the CI/CD push it into that as if it's a staging account. The best practice would be to have a separate account for staging so that when your CI/CD pipeline picks this up to deploy it, it's deploying it somewhere else and you never worry about name collisions. I know if I do this right now, I'll wind up with name collisions from the two just because of the, the demo spirits. So I'm going to skip SAM deploy for now. The next thing we want to do is we want to wire up some CI/CD, right? So to do that, we need a repo. But to do that, we also need to be in an active Git repository. So git init, git add all, git status, All right, let's touch, git ignore. Yeah, I know I'm in VS Code, but little Vim never hurt anybody, you know what I mean? Workflow ping, all that other stuff is good to go. All right. Okay. Little git magic there on the line for you. Okay, and git commit. It's weird. It's like I'm all hopped up. Like I had coffee, but my coffee was decaf. But I'm still like, I'm just so excited that y'all are here with me. It's fun. So we've got ourselves like a local repo now, right? So we want to create a repo that our CI/CD pipeline can get to. If you haven't checked out the GitHub command line tool, it's in beta, but it's extremely useful because you can do things like GitHub repo create, and it defaults to creating a private repo for you, so you don't accidentally expose your stuff on the interwebs either. One thing I don't like about it, it defaults to HTTPS instead of get. So I'm gonna do get remote and then search through my history. There we go, set URL. This is just changing it to SSH instead of HTTPS, so it doesn't ask me every time. And then if you're a Z shell user, GPSUP is get push set upstream. So it makes our master match the upstream master. Ta-da, and now we have a repo up on GitHub, right? We can prove that to ourselves real quick. By going and checking this out. What did I just do? Repositories. Here we go. Updated 17 seconds ago. Ta-da, it's a private repo. That seems to be the right one. It's got our workflow. It's got everything else in there, right? So, ta-da, workflow.asl.json, workflow.png. We got this nice, pretty picture and everything. All right, awesome. So we can roll over to CircleCI. And again, you can do this with any CI/CD tool. We have code pipeline, AWS code pipeline that's built into AWS. I just picked CircleCI because it's one that a lot of people use. They're partners of ours. It's a very successful tool, and you can see, look, this is what rehearsing gets you, people. See all that red? All that red? It's beautiful, beautiful red. All that red failed just to get us here to the success. Don't worry. Don't worry. You get to benefit from the fruits of my labor. And this was actually... I need to stop building this. I never disconnected it before. So we can add a project here. Uh-oh. Add projects, repo name, SFN. Maybe I've already got it. This is the downside of rehearsing is you get cruft left over in your account. So red rehearsal, that's right, Bart Castle. I don't want to be in there. That's the wrong org, man. That's why. Okay, take me out of here and back to my organization. That's why, y'all. Sometimes the answer is right there in front of you. You know what I mean? So we add projects. Here we go. SFN dev test setup project. All right, this is their default Go builder. It picked that up from the repo. That's nice. I built one up using the AWS serverless, AWS SAM serverless, AWS serverless orb. We'll see what it's called here in a minute, but I built one up already that we can just copy in. It's the AWS SAM serverless orb. An orb in CircleCI is kind of like a module that you can compose your file from. And so what we've done here, you got to use version 2.1 to use orbs, so we can get rid of that. We're bringing in that AWS SAM serverless orb. If you hit links over here in the chat, let me see if I can use my fancy button correctly. If I hit links, what happens? Nothing. If you hit exclamation point links in the chats, one of those links will be to this orb. So let me just manually go over here. See if I can type that. Look, I'm in the chat. There we go. One of those is the CircleCI orb that you want. All right. We use a Docker image with Golang 114. Check out the code, run SAM install, run our build step. Oh, this is neat. We got to give it an S3 bucket. I haven't done that yet. I promised we'd stick to the CLI as much as possible. So AWS S3 MB, what do I call that? We're going to change it. We'll call it isolator demo. 2020-0407, that's today. Ta-da! Now we have an S3 bucket. It's fantastic. We can put that in there in a couple places. So we basically just install the SAM CLI, build with some flags, and run. This use container false. This is for my fellow gophers. If you're building with SAM on Go, it doesn't like building inside a container, so you need to pass it that flag. And then we've just got the one step here, build and deploy. So we'll click start building, but we're going to add this manually. Download that config file, save it, and then let's go back to VS Code. Let's make ourselves a little CircleCI directory. Move our config file in there. Yeah. Yeah, looks good to me. All right. So one change, added CircleCI config file. We'll push it. All right. Now, one thing's going to happen here. Because we configured that project newly, it does not have any sort of AWS credentials to actually deploy that into the account. So if we go back, it's going to pick it up and it's going to try to build it. Yes, I have. When we go to start building, it's going to pick this up for one new workflow. It may have kept the project settings. I'm going to take this tab off screen for a second, just to see if I've got those environment variables. There's also a blog post in those, or there's not a blog post in those links. Let me copy these four. There's four. Actually, I'm going to give you a blog post that we have. Brett Get says CircleCI has new next-gen container images for Golang, which seem to work a little faster and have a few additional tools to support testing. Awesome. So my fellow Gophers, check that out as well. I just dropped a blog post in there that is specific to the AWS CircleCI orb that we're using. The main reason that we need that right this second is step 3, modify your CircleCI project settings, where we need to put some of these in. I'm going to check that in the project environment variables. They're actually already set for us, so this may work, and then I'll be very confused. Nope. Oh, okay. Well, you know, we're getting better and better with the demo, huh? All right, that was started 2 hours ago. Okay, so let's check GitHub real quick. Let's see, that CircleCI file made it up there. It's good to go. All right, let's just touch something real quick and kick off a config. Yeah, there is a cat. That's my little girl, Kara. She stands up at the top of the stairs and yells at me. When my demo's going poorly, she knows, and that's when she yells. So let's go over here. Let's go to our template. Let's make a quick change. Let's call this isolator. Isolator, save that. Push that. All right, now if the demo gods are with us, let's see. Can I get a pipeline number 16, please? Oh, good. Okay, so we got a pipeline number 16. Cool. And then we see our job is proceeding as planned here. Okay. So again, the 4 environment variables that I had to set, you didn't see there, and you're not gonna see there because that's my secrets, y'all. But they're listed in section 3 of that blog post. Everything else that we needed to do, you saw me do, including setting up that S3 bucket and setting up the GitHub repo. So at this point, we've gotten the workflow built. We've gotten the workflow pulled into a SAM template. We've gotten CI/CD up and running our first build. So, and we're at 29 minutes, right? Including a little bit of roughness. So let me hit pause right here. I'm gonna check the chat room, see if there's anything that I'm missing. I hear a cat. Yeah, we got the cat. Hi, bro. I have a question. Isla with trademark. Hi, Isla with trademark. I have an answer, I hope. Demon 12, why no love for Code Pipeline? I love Code Pipeline. This just happens to be the sample that we built, right? You can't build it on everything all the time. Code Pipeline is fantastic. If you haven't used it and you don't have a CI/CD workflow set up already and you're big on AWS, I definitely recommend you check it out. It does a lot, like it's very powerful for multi-stage builds and rollbacks and things that are dependent on one another. It is a fully featured, very powerful tool. I've had a really good experience with it. It's just that this orb was out there, so I wanted to show people CircleCI as well. But good question on that. Speedy, says Chris Munns. That's right. I would posit that my performance review should be related to how quickly I got to this point. Alejo links, AWS Config custom rules, that came from there. Yep, hello there. All right, Red Hersel, that's right. Time will tell. Yeah, see, time, I see what you did there. I see what you did there. Okay, so this is still, this is building over here. This, by the way, the first time it runs, it's got to pull the container, provision the instance and everything. It's about 3 to 4 minutes, so not too bad. Keep in mind, this is probably only running when you make feature commits, depending on your setup. If you're doing the local workflow where you're just doing SAM deploy to your own account, it's going to be much, much faster. And here now you're going to see, you see how quick that built because it's just one function in Go. Waiting for a change set to be created, so it's already gone up. Oh no. Oh no. Let's see what happened in CloudFormation over here, y'all. There's always something that you don't account for, right? Brancher staging. Why is it called Brancher? Because we hard coded that in the config file. Review in process. What's a review, y'all? Anybody got one of these before? Know what's up? Ed J Geek, click on the review. You click on the review. I'm just kidding. That's one of my colleagues. He's the best. If he does sessions with Sam and Happy Little APIs, so I highly recommend you check out both of those. I knew that he would be the one to answer that question because he's the one with all that CloudFormation knowledge. So click on the review. Now you need to. Oh, I did create change set first. You could check the events section for the CloudFormation. Look at y'all. Y'all all fired up. Review in progress. Change sets. One or more subs don't specify expected arguments. Look, I made a liar out of myself, y'all. So, okay, actually specify a string as a first argument and an optional second argument to specify a mapping of values. All right, so let's go back to our template. That should then, we see that from a CI/CD perspective, it did the right thing, right? Like it made it all the way through to deployment, pushed that CloudFormation transformed stack up, and it failed because I gave it some bad data. But the next step is to start iterating in AWS Lambda functions in place of the past states that we had before. And then we can work on our business logic one function at a time. So real quick, if we go back over here and look at our previewed function, we see that we have isolate and snapshot. Let's take our hello world function and we'll just rename it to be our isolate function. So there's a couple places we need to do that. Let me clean this up. We're going to rename this the isolator function, which means a couple things. One, we need to put that map there that we've talked about. This is going to be isolator function ARN. And that's just going to allow us to use this inline up here. And then we said we're going to call this the isolator function now. So we're going to do some like directory maintenance, you know what I mean? Some cleanup. We'll always start with what they give us. Isolator, we got an output down here too. All right. Some helpful notes to ourselves. Isolator function.arn, the rest of this is unchanged. Now what we haven't changed is the actual path. And we just need to change that name there. The way it does everything in Go is these are all set up just to be, I'm neither in a module nor my go path. You're a liar. I'm actually in a module there. Don't worry about this down here. So with this little set of changes, we've done two things, right? One, oh, we haven't yet. There's one very important thing that I didn't do. Start at isolate, states isolate. And this is where we go back to the toolkit from last week. We need to go back to our definition here. This is the definition for our step functions workflow. We want to start at isolate. We don't want isolate to be a pass statement. We want it to be a Lambda task statement. So here in the lines, we hit control space, brings up the code snippets. We find the Lambda task state. Boom, it fills all that out for us, right? So we clear out our tooltips. Isolate is actually the function we want. End is going to be true for this branch inside the parallel execution. Get rid of our old state here. Type task, resource. That's going to be the ARN. We're not going to use any of these other parameters yet. We just want the most basic version here. So now this branch is changed to look like this. It doesn't make sense inside our workflow definition to change that ARN. But it does inside our SAM template. I just need to get the spacing lined up. There we go. Beauty, eh? Okay, so start at isolate, states, isolate, type, task, resource. And here we're going to do the string substitution we talked about earlier, where we get this isolator function ARN and put it up here. Now I'm going to zoom out for just a little bit. It might be like a little more difficult to read, but I kind of want you to see everything all at once if we can. Maybe I can collapse this other branch and this branch. And then, yeah, I'll leave this up for a minute. So this is the entire definition of our state string. And the operative function here is that we start with this sub command, which takes two arguments. One, a string. And so we've defined this, using the pipe allows us to define this like doc-here style string. Sorry, here doc style string. And then the second argument is this map of variables up here to values, right? And again, we're using dynamic referencing so that every time this gets deployed, or if it gets deployed as part of a new stack, or if the name gets changed from parameters and all of that, that's actually gonna stay up to date because we're only using the reference. So let me zoom back in a little bit. That's really big. Still yelling at me about Go. It's gonna be okay, y'all. It's gonna be okay because the CI/CD is gonna handle building there. And actually, if you use SAM build and SAM deploy locally, it's gonna fix all that. So get status. Yep, moved a whole bunch of stuff around. Added the isolator function, and we push it. And that's it. So we'll go and check and make sure that CircleCI is building the way that we want. It is. We'll bring that up. We know that takes about 3 minutes. So I want to move on and talk about one thing, invoking your step functions. And this will make more sense once this finishes. Oh, I said I was going to stay in VS Code, didn't I? So another part of the AWS SAM CLI is SAM local. SAM local allows you to do things like invoke your Lambda function locally or run an API locally. It also allows you to debug your Lambda functions. One of my favorite features is that it allows you to generate test events. So if you run SAM local help, you'll see that there's a generate event command. And then again, just go down the tree, right? Turtles all the way. Generate event help. And you get a list of services that can produce events that SAM local can generate mock events for you. In our case, we want config. So let's see what's available inside AWS Config. We get an item change notification, an oversized item change notification, and a periodic rule. So if you're not familiar with AWS Config, you set rules, and then whenever events occur that trigger those rules, you get a notification. It's called an item change notification. Some item that you're concerned about or that your rules are watching has changed. So that's actually the one we want. And I think if we do help, it's just going to tell me, what are you doing, you big dummy, just get an event. No, it gives us some other options where you can modify the mock, so you can pass it a specific region or account ID. We don't need any of those. So let's just, I'm going to cheat a little bit here, bring it into the pasteboard so that we can see it in VS Code first. It's easier. What do we call that? Config event.json. Right? So if we look at this, we get an invoking event, which is an AWS config rule. We get rule parameters, all this stuff, right? And all of this is going to be passed in via our Lambda function as pass through. I just wanted to show you this so that when you're setting up some sort of test pipeline, you know how to get well-formed events that are going to match the form that they're going to come in from the AWS services themselves. So real quick, let me save this. We'll check in on our build. It's getting there. All right, it's on the SAM CLI bit, so it's close to being done. The other thing, no generated events for EventBridge yet. Luckily, it gives examples in the console. Good call out there, Demon 12. So yeah, we're missing, like, it would be lovely to have a little EventBridge there. I'm pretty sure that request is noted. So, sorry, I think I said console in SAM CLI. You're right. But as you point out, they're also available. It is noted. EdgeGeek picked up on that. It is noted in the console, in the AWS management console. Go back over here, package SAM app for deployment, SAM deploy. This is very exciting. This is very, very exciting. What's going to happen, I wonder? It's going to be great when it fails because I gave it the same name and didn't delete the old stack. I don't know. Well, create in progress. Resources, we're starting with step function state machine. Create complete. We come over here, we check out our definition, and oh wow, look at that. Ta-da, start, isolate, snapshot, notify, end. Starts at isolate. It's properly transformed that reference in the sub that we talked about to the reference of the ARN of that Lambda function. So hooray, we're green at 243. So it's always good to be back to green. Now that we have this, oh, back in VS Code. I cheat sometimes. I use the terminal in VS Code, you know what I mean? There's this command right here, AWS Step Functions start execution. It takes a state machine ARN, and again, we made this one of the outputs of our stack. So we can go back, I mean, we can either copy it here, right, there's our ARN. We can get it from the stack in CloudFormation as an output. Oh no, I got the wrong thing, didn't I? Yeah, so I passed the wrong thing here. What we actually want is the isolator itself. So you know, computers, they always do exactly what you tell them to do, right? I'm gonna push this just so that it comes up later, and then we'll move on with invoking that step function. Make sure I gave it a good name at least. What do we got here? Isolator workflow. It's better. I named it right. I named it for what I asked for. I just asked for the wrong thing. Corrected outputs. And then that'll build in the background while we're going about our business. If we come back over here, our state machine ARN is available in the AWS Management Console. Now, if you're running the AWS SAM CLI locally for your dev workflow, you're running SAM build, SAM deploy, SAM deploy. That's why you add all those things to the outputs as well, so that when it completes deploying to your developer account or to your development account, you get that ARN as an output, and you can pick that up and use it then to execute based on events. So again, this AWS Step Functions start execution command either takes the ARN of the state machine, so we're gonna have to plug that in here. Not either, I mean, it only takes that. So you got to put in the state machine ARN that you want to execute for your workflow. And then we're just going to run it. We'll throw it some empty input since that step function, I'm sorry, the Lambda function isn't actually expecting anything right now. And it'll tell us there's an execution ARN and a start date. So it's kicked it off. And we can go back to the AWS Management Console here. And we see that it did indeed execute just now. That execution succeeded. And we can take a look at our graph, right? We get this input state. That's exactly the input we expected. And if you go into our AWS Lambda function, that's going to be the output state. This is the output from the snapshot pass state, right? So it's aggregated. We didn't tell it where to put anything, so it's aggregated that output side by side. This is the isolate function, and this is the snapshot function. This all deals with result path, output path, input path, and it's all based on JSON path. We're going to do a separate session only on that coming up. It's listed on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Rob Sutter. I can't remember the exact date off the top of my head. Maybe one of my colleagues can find it from the schedule, but it is coming up in the next couple of weeks right here during this series. And then of course, notify, you see we get the same input passed all the way through because these are just past states. So now at this point, we can go back to VS Code and we can begin to iterate on our Lambda function until it actually performs the business requirement, which is to take in that, it's going to be an events.aws config, I forget what the name of it is, takes in that event and then returns whatever we predefine as the output after it's changed the security groups on that EC2 instance, right? So at this point, it's just up to you to do the work. I'm not going to do the work here. We're at 247. We've seen how to define a basic workflow using the AWS Toolkit for Visual Studio Code and how that let us match that workflow to what the business analyst provided us. We've seen how to use AWS SAM CLI and how to bring our workflow definition into SAM CLI with that magic incantation using the sub intrinsic function. We've set up CI/CD using the CircleCI orb. Again, if you're not already using CI/CD, also check out AWS Code Pipeline. It's a fantastic product. We've shown how to iterate in some functionality for the step function, and for the Lambda functions, and I'm gonna show you one more bit on that. And then we've shown how to invoke the step functions remotely using events that are generated by SAM CLI. And that forms the basis for your integration or end-to-end testing, right? Your ability to programmatically pass it known events and expect known outcomes. So since we've got a little bit of time, I'm gonna crawl the questions in just a minute. I wanna show you one more thing in the template. So we have the isolator function, but we also know that we needed a snapshot function, right? So we can close this and come back over here and just duplicate this, right? And so what we've done right now is just add a snapshot function inside the SAM template. That's all it knows about. So we need to also duplicate the code. Oops, We'll rename this to snapshot, just like we had in our template. Super. We probably want to copy the output because we'll need it for other stuff later. We'll call that the snapshot function. And that's a Lambda function to initiate EBS volume snapshot. But our workflow doesn't know about it yet, right? And it needs to know about it in a couple places. One, it needs to know about it here where we change this definition. And what we can do is just copy this isolator state. Actually, we can just copy the inner information here from the isolate state into the snapshot state, but it needs to be the snapshot function ARN. But sub doesn't know about that yet. So you gotta, whoops, too much. So you gotta go in here and give it another value in the map. Snapshot function ARN. Maps want commas. Snapshot function .arn. And then one very important place is in our IAM role, right? Because now our workflow knows about that function and it's going to try to invoke that function, but it doesn't actually have permission to invoke that function. We like to keep our IAM roles scoped as tightly as possible. So we don't use stars. We use references, right? And that's it. Like now we've plugged in the second Lambda function into our workflow, quick commit and redeploy, and that's all it takes. So implemented snapshot function, git push, and then CircleCI is going to pick that up for us. It's going to update our stack. And then we'll have two Lambda functions where there used to be none. Hold on, that was way early. There we go, build and deploy. We'll let that kick off over there. And I'm gonna check in the questions. Let's see. I know my people answer. I've got to pick up my microphone and walk over here. So I apologize if there's any noise. You're gonna see. Stay blazing. Oh well, nobody seems to really care about cybersecurity. A little off topic, but where would I learn cloud security? I keep reading about how it's getting hacked and they need help. Every platform requires its users to build their applications in a secure manner. The first place I would start is just with IAM, right? So I would start with aws.amazon.com/IAM, gain a good understanding of it, and gain a really good understanding of the shared responsibility model, because there are things that you can't touch that AWS takes responsibility for security, but then there are also application elements that you own, and then you're responsible for the security of those elements. That's where you really want to focus your efforts and your learnings. Ed J Geek, time for globals. I'm not going to cover globals today, but I am listening for you, Ed J Geek. For serverless, you can start here. Thanks, Ed J Geek, for dropping that security link in there. Appreciate the question. Stay blazing. Yup, the lads down the cans. I just deployed my group project to AWS for my first time deploying anything. It was very simple and lovely. Great. Glad to hear that. I wish you many more successful deploys and far fewer red deploys than I have had. So many videos to watch. Another AWS channel I have to sub to from Protobuff. Hey, thanks for the shout out. Appreciate it. Hope that it's good content for you. Doug Toppin, good example. I learned a few things from watching your dev workflows. Thanks. Would be nice to have similar session and use AWS CDK instead of SAM, since there's support for step functions there, says Christian Paul 00. Christian Paul 00, boy, do I have some good news for you. Because the first week of May, I'm going to be joined right here on this very channel with Richard Boyd, who joined me last week for the announcement. And Richard Boyd is a senior developer advocate for developer tools at AWS. And the title of that session is going to be Step Functions Workflows with the CDK. So I know nothing about the CDK. The CDK for me is like Python. It's a thing. I know it exists. I've seen it. I recognize it. I know nothing about it. Richard's going to join me and he's going to take everybody through that, through building step functions with the CDK. So first Tuesday in May, I believe. I think it's May 5th. Definitely make sure you follow us and come back for that one. Boyd is a rad fella. He is indeed a rad fella. He's my favorite co-host on Twitch. Looking at you, Richard Boyd. I highly recommend never doing resources star and IAM policies. Demon 012. Yes. I also highly recommend never doing resources star and IAM policies. Sometimes there's a little bit of pain to get it right. I guarantee you there's more pain if you leave it wide open in the long run. So here we are. We're down at SAM deploy. We're racing against the clock. We're modifying some step functions. There's an update rollback in progress. Oh no, state machine does not support attribute ARN. So it's 2:55. What do y'all think? You think I can get this fixed in time? Let's see. Update rollback complete. Events, error, outputs, resource. That's right. It does not support that attribute. Different resources support different attributes. Unfortunately, ARN is not one for the workflow. It gives you that when you ask for the reference for it. So a little bit of a gotcha there. We'll redeploy. We've got 6 minutes. Get add all, get commit, output fix, get push, and then we'll see. Either it does or it doesn't, y'all. I am confident that it will. It's a race. It's a race. Mr. Bean, anybody? It's a race. No. All right, build number 20. Lucky number 20. Number 20 is the luckiest number for Twitch, I hear. So CI is launching new virtual machine, installs SAM and runs it, meaning it will create stack on AWS and it runs tests, and after that destroys stack. Am I correct, or will it not delete stack? So 28 mental, thanks for the question. That's all on how you set it up. So in this case, it is creating the stack is the final step. That's the actual deployment. So that's deploying your resources to your environment. There is an instance that is created along the way that's installing SAM CLI. That's all happening inside of CircleCI or wherever your CI provider is. From our perspective, we never launch any EC2 instances. We never create any VPCs, subnets, security group rules, any of that stuff, right? Unless you explicitly declare those. So that's all largely dependent on how you do it. The install, the testing, all that stuff is going to happen on your CI/CD platform. And then that final CloudFormation deploy is what brings only the runtime resources into your environment. So good question. Thanks for that. Can't we do that simply within AWS? Why do we need CircleCI? You absolutely can do that only within AWS using the AWS code suite. AWS code pipeline, code build, code deploy, code commit, all of those. If you are a AWS first or AWS native organization or builder, then I highly recommend you check those out. Let's see what else we got. CDK is awesome, but docs need to be improved. Feel too aimed at JavaScript and feel weird when using other languages. From Demon012. Thanks for the feedback. We'll make sure that gets to the team. Helpful Robot, can you recommend any good tutorials on SAM? Oh, I'm sure he has a few. Helpful Robot, if you're a Golang developer, if you're a gopher, there's golang.serverlessworkshops.io, which takes you through all of the setup. It is very specific to Go, so it's gonna like show you how to configure the debugger and all of that stuff. But no, Python developer. EdJGeek, paging EdJGeek. We have a Python question from Helpful Robot. EdJGeek, paging EdJGeek. So in all seriousness, I'm gonna leave you with EdJGeek on that one. And I would also again suggest to you that you check out the Sessions with Sam series that he's running. He's gonna correct me on this if I'm wrong. I believe Sessions with Sam is every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern. EdJGeek. Every Thursday, 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 a.m. or 1 p.m. Eastern time. I got it right. See, you're important to me, buddy. I know when your shows are. And also every other Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Pacific, he does Happy Little APIs Season 2. Very API gateway focused. Highly recommended. So make sure you check out both of those. They're both here on the AWS channel on Twitch. Julian R. Wood makes a good point. You don't need any CI/CD. You can do everything from SAM build, SAM deploy right on your machine. I just wanted you to have an example of how you can take something and fit it into like sort of an enterprise requirement, fit it into an enterprise workflow. And then of course you can build it out from here for whatever steps you have in there on your own. Package SAM app for deployment. It's 3 o'clock, y'all, but look, change set created successfully. Create complete. Look at that, just in time. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I hope you learned a lot. Again, I will chop these videos up based on the topics that we covered. Basic workflow definition with the toolkit, SAM CLI, setting up CI/CD, bringing in your Lambda functions, and invoking step functions remotely. Thank you all for coming, for sharing your questions. Thank you to my colleagues for supporting moderation. And be sure to follow the AWS channel and follow me on my channel. Send me your questions on Twitter, and I will see you all on Thursday if you come to my channel, same time, or I'll see you here next Tuesday for more step functions. Thanks, everybody.